2022, Catholic Education Tasmania launched its statewide literacy strategy, Literate Learners for Life. Every student, every subject, every year. This is a system-wide strategy and commitment that will ensure every young person in our care flourishes and reaches their full human potential under God's loving care. Literate Learners for Life will address student learning and quality life achievement by ensuring that every one of our students has the evidence-based reading and literacy instruction they require and deserve. Hand in hand with quality instruction is our commitment to monitor and manage the individual learning progress of every student in our system. To launch our strategy, we had planned a system-wide development day for all teachers, kinder to 12. Our plans to meet face-to-face were significantly reimagined as we navigated the restrictions of COVID-19. Over 3 days, our meeting room in Hobart was transformed into a world-class TV production studio where we were able to broadcast live to our 38 schools across 3 regions of Tasmania. We heard from literacy experts across the country. Ollie Lovell introduced us to cognitive load theory. Dr. Jennifer Buckingham explained how the science of reading enhances student learning. Professor Pamela Snow outlined the elements of vocabulary across our curriculum, and Associate Professor Tanya Seri unpacked the writing process for students across all learning areas and ages. Evidence-based practice is at the heart of this work, with each school in our system supported by the presence of a literacy practice leader, led by Catholic Education Tasmania's Literacy Project Leader, Lisa Fenning.
So one of the wonderful things about being able to marry the work of Catholic education and this very evidence-based approach to learning literacy is that we understand the fundamental relationship between the two. That it's all about coming to know and understand more deeply, and once we know and understand things, we're much closer to believing them. And that, of course, doesn't rule out our ability to use reason, to judge, to critique, to ask questions and to learn. So fundamental to all of that is speaking and listening and reading and writing. So I think it's highly commendable that as an organisation we have married together our religious, our spiritual mission and our educational one. And it's a great delight to be part of that, and particularly these 3 days that we've had together.
I wish to take this opportunity to commend this initiative of Catholic Education in Tasmania to concentrate on the importance of literacy for all students.
Here is a model of human cognitive architecture, of kind of our brain systems. Now, it's a model, and in the words of George Box, all models are wrong, but some are helpful. So of course, this is a simplified model, but it is very helpful in helping us understand what goes on in our minds and those of our students. What this shows us is that our kind of memory system is made up of 3 key components. The first is the environment, which is an unlimited external source of information. So this video is in the environment, reading books is in the environment, searching up things on Google is in the environment, asking a coach or a colleague or a superior or a junior for advice is all in the environment, and that's an unlimited source of information. When we think about something, when we pay attention to something, that attention brings that information into what we call our working memory. Working memory is internal, but it's limited in capacity, and usually we talk about having around 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information as its capacity, as what it can hold at any one time. And when we think about things, when we link them to things we already know, often when we sleep on them, when we revise them, retrieve them, and repeat them, that information can move from our working memory up into our long-term memory, which is unlimited and internal. Now, the core idea or the kind of core constraint on this whole system can be discovered by playing a game of spot the difference. And if we play spot the difference between these 3 components of the human memory system, we recognize that there's only one limited component, and that one limited component is working memory. And this tells us that working memory is the bottleneck of thinking, and especially when it comes, or only when it comes to new information.
The next concept I'm going to have a look at with you is called the reading brain. And this is becoming more and more well understood over time, thanks to really fantastic books by people like Stanislas Dehaene and others. And it really shows that what we thought was true about what was going on cognitively when students were learning to read based on some of these models of reading, and one of which I'll talk about shortly, that they actually correspond with the activity that is seen in the brain when students learn to read. This learning to read isn't like learning how to speak. The human brain doesn't have a specialized reading area that becomes active when children are regularly exposed to print. And that's because reading and writing are relatively recent inventions in terms of human history and evolution. So unlike spoken language, which really is something that humans develop mostly spontaneously just by being around other people who speak, children won't learn to read just by being around people who read and seeing them reading and seeing books. Some instruction is required for all students, and for the vast majority of students, really good methodical reading instruction is required to make those connections between the areas of the brain that are designed for other purposes. So those neural networks connect the sound, the spelling, and the meaning areas of the brain. So the spelling area is the visual area. It's what the word looks like. So we need to connect what we see with what we hear and with what we understand as being the meanings of words. And that doesn't happen readily for everyone, and it needs to be built up over time. And some types of instruction are much better at doing that than others.
There's some important things that we need to understand about vocabulary in English, and one of the most important things to be thinking about here is simply the size of the vocabulary that we have to work with in spoken and written English. It's a historical quirk of English that we don't have time to go into in any detail today, that English has just raked in as many words as it wants to over a period of hundreds and really a couple of thousands of years easily, to give us the accumulation of a very, very rich vocabulary. So this means that to become a capable user of the English language, we've got a longer, steeper climb. The view's arguably better from the top because of the increased flexibility that our larger vocabulary gives us, but that does create enormous challenges in getting to the top of the hill in the first place.
Some quick myth busters. There are some myths around writing instruction, and I'd like to put two particularly that come up a lot to rest. The first one is the myth that students learn to write by writing, and that students get better at writing by writing. In reality, writing is biologically secondary, which means that it has to be taught. If no one taught us how to write, how to form the letters, how to spell, how to construct sentences in print, we wouldn't have that skill. Biologically secondary skill, including writing, but also including reading, mathematical operations, playing chess, and a host of skills, implies that students need to be taught. And in this case, students need to be taught how to write, and they also need to be given a lot of opportunity for practice alongside teacher modelling, constructive feedback, and progressive skill building. So whilst students do get better at writing by writing, the caveat is that we have to teach students what we want them to know and do, and we have to always be providing excellent models, constructive feedback, and progressively building their skills. The second myth, students with a strong spoken language will have strong written language or writing. Now, writing is a form of communication, but it's not just the printed form of what we say. Quality writing is different to how we speak. It's typically much more formal, more grammatically accurate, and filled with many more sophisticated language structures. If you think about a conversation you had with a colleague or a friend and compare it to text from a novel or a textbook, you'll see that the style is quite different and that written language is, as it says on the screen, more formal, more accurate and more sophisticated. And we need to teach students to use that level of writing as opposed to just putting down what they say on a page.
There is no doubt the science of reading is profoundly evidence-based and is an eminently sensible approach. Applying the science of reading as an integral part of our literacy project will be essential to the lifelong benefit of so many of our young learners. It is an exciting journey that begins from today, one that we will take forward together as we explore and unpack these ideas for the benefit of all our learners.
Literate Learners for Life, every student, every subject, every year, is a critical initiative that will actively support our state's call to action for 100% literacy across Tasmania. Not only does Literate Learners for Life provide our students with the vital skills they need for daily life, but also supports their learning about the Catholic faith, the person of Jesus Christ, and his great desire for personal intimacy in their lives and the lives of all those whom we encounter.